Hello everyone, Critical Map Media here bringing you another video, this time a game review, so stick around while I dive into the meat of it, breaking it down in great detail why I like or dislike a game. And what game is up on the docket today, you ask? A little indie game by the name of Signalis, and what exactly is Signalis? It's a retro, futuristic, psychological survival cosmic horror. Damn, that was a mouthful. It's comparative to the PlayStation 1 classics Silent Hill and Resident Evil with an aesthetic similar to the 1979 Alien film directed by Ridley Scott. It was developed by a small team going by the name of Rose Engine and published by Humble Games. It was originally released October 27, 2022. It's on all major consoles as well as PC. I've completed the game both on Steam and Nintendo Switch. I'll be breaking down and covering each important aspect of the game, from its art, its mechanics, sound, and story. So stick around to see what works and doesn't in Signalis. Let's kick this off starting with the first thing you will notice about the majority of video games. Whether it's from their advertising, screenshots, or gameplay footage, the visual aesthetics, and graphic design. It is similar to that of the PlayStation 1 era games in its graphical design minus the heinous texture warping associated with that console. It has a top-down fixed camera angle with full 3D rendered environments and models utilizing a low polygon count. However, it almost borders on the line of being pixel art. It has an anime pixel aesthetic for the major cutscenes with occasional set pieces utilizing in-engine graphics for some of its cinematics and storytelling. I'm a sucker for retro-futuristic horror like Alien, Signalis giving us a unique version of it with familiar CRT monitors and DOS operating systems. It really nails the vibes it's going for. Even with the limited polygons, pixelated graphics, the game is beautiful. It's detailed and rife with a dark, ominous, and mysterious atmosphere that begs you to explore every nook and cranny of this game's world. The character models are simplistic but distinct and fully detailed. The enemy and various different models of androids stand out from each other. It at times switches into a first-person perspective for certain sequences of puzzles, allowing you to fully take in the detailed environments and world. I love this game's first-person segments. They show off just how much work was put into this game's environments. If you ask me, it's games like Signalis that reveal the fallacy of the AAA's industry's constant push for higher fidelity and bigger budgets. Sometimes less is more. Style and substance can go a long way versus vapid flashiness. Not every single game needs to be pushing for greater graphical fidelity, especially when they lack a creative vision or just look like a bland, boring, and brown Call of Duty game. I really enjoyed exploring the world visually in Signalis. It did an excellent job of building some amazing set pieces in horror with its limited visuals. Your character is an artificial being, an android, which I'll touch on more later in the story segment. It's in my headcanon this is how these units see the world through their limited, flawed biomechanical eyes. The game features a CRT mode, but I can never recommend a CRT filter. They are just not my thing. It is nice to have the option for those who do, however. I could go on, but I think it's time we move on to the next section and perhaps the most important part of a video game, the gameplay. Signalis is a survival horror with a fixed camera perspective. It utilizes auto-aiming, a limited inventory management system with a sparse amount of ammo and healing items to find. It's very much a game where you pick and choose the fights, deciding whether or not they are worth the drain on resources. I'll do my best in breaking down each of the game's systems. The inventory screen is very much Resident Evil. The game launched with only 6 inventory slots initially. This is how I played the game when it first released. It was easily the weakest aspect of it, but a recent update has fixed this and overhauled the inventory management. Now by default you have 6 slots, but 2 modules, the flashlight and cybernetic eye, take up their own unique slot, leaving you with 6 slots for everything else. It also has an expanded option which increases the amount of slots to 8, which is how I recommend you play the game. There are a lot of key items, and it can be frustrating with the original way it was designed, making you take frequent trips back to the save room to deposit items in your box. The new system in no way makes the game trivial, only less frustrating in managing your items. Last I checked, this update has not hit console, but has on Steam and is in the works for coming to the other platforms. You have your Resident Evil style safe rooms where you can save and store your items or key items for later use. These function in the way you would expect them to and are placed frequently enough, but not too much throughout the game. The game uses an auto-aiming feature. The longer you aim your weapon, the more your aim focuses. This is indicated by a red box that appears over your target. It works fine for the most part. When you down the enemy, they don't immediately die. The intent for you to run up and melee them on the ground to finish them off. This causes a problem where the auto aim will unlock from the downed enemies while other monsters approach you. It's rare but can be annoying when it happens, and I do feel like it happens more often when you play with a controller. It has a pretty solid weapon variety for your arsenal. As you progress and explore the game, your arsenal will expand. I like the disposable stun rods a lot, a defensive item that you can find and equip in the game. You can stack enemies and down multiples using it. Enemies will rise again, coming back to life, however. It's not a matter of if they will, but of when they will rise again. This can be annoying with them rising as soon as leaving and coming back for the first time. There are flares that can be used to burn them permanently, but they are rare, and for whatever reason, you can't stack burn corpses. Taking enough damage will cause you to limp and bleed, adding a nice touch of pressure and tension for being at low health. The game locks progression via puzzles and locked doors. Signalis' puzzles strike that perfect balance of not being immediately easy to solve but not overly frustrating and vague either. Most of the puzzles have a logical solution that can be achieved by manipulating them, or piecing together what key items to use that you have on hand or stored in your item box. They do not overstay their welcome and are fun and engaging to solve. They make excellent use of the radio too, using it to find codes and fighting one of the game's more unique enemies and solve various puzzles. You can even decode signals from your radio outside the game to get unique images. The mechanics in Signalis are solid, and I enjoyed trekking through the halls of the mining facility, exploring every nook and cranny for supplies and pieces of lore, while trying to avoid fights when I could to conserve ammo and healing items. The puzzles were fun and made me feel smarter than I actually am when I solved them. I feel like I have spent enough time on the mechanics and given you a decent enough idea of what you can expect if you're going to get the game. Next up, I'm going to very briefly cover the sound design, and then the story, and finally summarize my thoughts. One of, if not the most important element of horror the sound design can make or break a horror game. Dead Space, for example, would not have done nearly as well if it wasn't for its spine-chilling soundscape that kept you on edge as you explored its derelict ship. So, Signalis' sound design, how did it fare? Well, it's really good. I love the radio frequencies and the opening octune bit and the symphonic melodies that really draw you in and grip you in the moment. I actually like the more subtle notes as well and understated tracks, sometimes as simple as just 2 or 3 notes that do an excellent job at setting the tone and conveying a feeling to the player. The effects are well made and overall fitting for the retro-futuristic setting. You'll hear the familiar, well, maybe not so familiar now to you younger generations, sound of an old computer booting up. While the section was rather brief, I just really didn't have too much to say beyond that I like it a lot and it's really good. It's time for me to move on now to the final sections of the video. You awake from a cryogenic pod taking control of your character. You're an Ellister unit, a combat mechanic meant for deep space exploration. You discovered a damaged photo on board the ship you're stationed on. Checking the other cryopod, you find it empty. You suit up in an EVA suit and go out onto the planet's surface before descending down a hole and then crawling your way into a tunnel. From there, you have a vision of a woman in white, blacking out and then finding yourself standing in front of a mirror in a mining facility's bathroom. It is an excellent opening. I don't want to dive too deep into the story. For one, I could go on forever about it. Two, I don't want to spoil it for you. But I do want to touch on what I can. It's very much a story I believe to be worth experiencing yourself and talking about. You're here at the mining facility searching for someone, which searching for loved ones seems to be one of the game's underlying themes. You're not directly told this in the beginning. The game hints at it, giving you context clues until you reach the upper level of the mining facility, and you hand over the photo you found over to another replica. A replica, by the way, is an artificial synthetic being, aka an android, which is what you are and the majority of the game's characters. Some form of cancerous growth is infecting the other replicas and killing their human counterparts. Humans are called gestalts by the game. I probably butchered that word. There are humans and androids, okay? You're an android searching for your human, and that's all you need to know. The cancerous growth is changing the androids into horrible monsters, and it's infecting them with memories that aren't their own or from past experiences they're not sure if it's theirs or what. The game isn't forthcoming with its story. Much of it is open for you to interpret or hidden via notes and diaries. Normally, I'm not a big fan of reading notes and logs and extra bits in games, but Signalis has me scouring every inch of the facility trying to piece together what's happening. The game also builds a sense that you're constantly being watched with security cameras everywhere. It's well written. I'm in love with this game's writing and world building. It's a game you can replay and glean new insights from and have new revelations about its world and plot with each new playthrough. It reminds me a bit of Dark Souls, where you're given this storied world, but it's hidden from you. It's up to you to put the pieces of the puzzle together, to explore every nook and cranny, and to figure out what's happening for yourself. On the flip side, like Dark Souls, you can ignore it and instead focus purely on the gameplay. Its writing is subtle and doesn't beat you over the head. Signalis' world is rich and a beautifully written cosmic psychological horror with multiple endings for you to discover. It reminds me of Silent Hill and Dark Souls in the way it's written, with a bit of Dead Space thrown in for good measure. I only made the connection to Dead Space myself on my second playthrough, but to expand upon it would be to spoil a large portion of its story. It's not derivative by any means, and I only use these other games to compare it to so you get an idea of what I'm talking about or what the game is like. Game features themes of grief, lost loved ones, trauma, and love itself. It's an excellent game, and it really spoke to me through its writing, and honestly, it's my favorite part of the game. It's what made me love it so much. Anyways, it's time to wrap up my thoughts and summarize my final opinion of the game. While I had a few nitpicks, Signalis is expertly written and crafted with refined survival horror mechanics. I played it multiple times and bought it on multiple platforms. The reason I decided to talk about Signalis is that I can't stop thinking about it, from its world and characters to themes and art style. I find it increasingly rare that a game sticks around with me like this. Rare that I bother returning or playing through multiple times, scouring every inch of a game. Its themes are beautiful, dark, and mysterious. It may not be the scariest game of all time, but I fully recommend Signalis. I'm debating if I want to continue giving scores or ratings in my reviews. I think it's kind of reductive to try and break something down into a numbered metric, but I also acknowledge it can be useful. So for now, at least for games, I'm going to continue assigning a score. For Signalis, I'd have to give it a solid 9.5 out of 10. It's become one of my favorite horror games of all time, and I don't foresee myself forgetting about it anytime soon. Well, guys, if you made it this far in, thank you. Consider liking and subscribing if you want to see more content from me. I'll see you guys next time. Till then, make sure to carry a spare repair patch or two for any sad, broken Android waifus you may meet out there.